Bianca Caldwell had always been the epitome of grace, the perfect wife and mother, dutiful, supportive, and loving. But when her husband's betrayal unfolded like a cruel script in front of her, something shifted inside her. This was her story, but it was also a story of redemption, of claiming power that had always been hers, but hidden beneath years of sacrifice. It all began that summer afternoon in the plush atmosphere of an upscale restaurant. Gregory, her husband of 28 years, stood before their guests, his champagne glass still suspended in his hand. What should have been a moment of celebration for their daughter, Amelia's college graduation, was suddenly ripped apart. Gregory had announced he was leaving her, not with the sorrowful tone of a man torn between choices, but with the brash triumph of someone who felt they'd won. The clink of silverware stopped. Conversations froze mid-sentence. Guests, friends, stared between the two of them, their eyes flicking to Bianca, waiting for her reaction. For the drama they expected. The tears, the shouting, the desperate, tearful exit. But Bianca surprised them all. She smiled. "Congratulations on your honesty, Gregory," she said. Her voice was calm, controlled, but there was a deep well of strength in it. Bianca Caldwell, 54 years old, had lived a life of compromise. She had put her dreams on hold, sacrificed her ambitions, and raised their brilliant daughter while supporting Gregory through his failed ventures and endless midlife crises. In silence, she had carried their family, while Gregory chased fleeting passions and questionable investments. Amelia, seated beside her, looked frozen, her graduation cap still perched on her head. Her face was pale, her horror palpable. Bianca turned to her daughter, kissed her on the cheek, and whispered, "I am so proud of you, sweetheart. Today is still about you." Then, Bianca turned to the stunned guests. She straightened her dress, spoke with grace and authority, and dismissed the gathering. "Please, enjoy your meal. I wish you all a lovely afternoon," she said, and left. The heavy door of the restaurant swung behind her, cutting off the murmurs of confusion. And as she stepped into the scorching summer heat, it was the first time in years Bianca could truly breathe. But behind her, Gregory's voice rang out, now high-pitched and frantic, his bravado crumbling. "Bianca, what the hell is this? What have you done?" Bianca didn't turn. Instead, a small, satisfied smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. The envelope she had given him contained the beginning of her meticulous revenge, a revenge that had been months in the making. For 30 years, Bianca had been the practical one. While Gregory dreamed big and took risks, she maintained stability, saving for their daughter's education while Gregory squandered funds on foolish ventures. When he quit his steady job to follow a fleeting passion of selling handcrafted furniture, Bianca worked overtime as a finance manager at Treventa Corp. She had always put her dreams of opening a financial consultancy for women on hold, believing it would come after Amelia graduates and after Gregory finds stability. But 3 months ago, she noticed discrepancies in their joint account, small, unexplained transfers, and when Gregory left his phone unlocked, the messages about his affair with Cassandra Wells, his much younger girlfriend, were there. Hidden funds, stolen moments, and secret plans for a life without her. The final blow was the text he'd sent about their plans for the day after Amelia's graduation, the day he planned to announce his grand exit. But Gregory had forgotten one thing. Bianca had been a financial professional for 30 years. She knew how to track money. She understood the language of assets, and she remembered the prenuptial agreement they had signed 28 years ago. Ironically, it was a document Gregory had insisted upon to protect his future, but it contained a fidelity clause, a clause that would now ruin him. Bianca didn't confront him immediately. Instead, she gathered evidence, consulted with attorneys, and prepared. She timed everything perfectly, knowing Gregory would wait until after the graduation to make his announcement. He had no idea she was already ahead of him. That morning, before his grand declaration, Bianca had filed for divorce and served him papers, the document safely hidden, out of his reach. After the restaurant, Bianca drove home to their spacious colonial house in Augusta, the one Gregory had promised to Cassandra. Inside, everything appeared the same. Family photos, antique furniture, the worn leather couch where they had once dreamt of their future together. But Bianca knew. She went upstairs, opened the closet, and found Gregory's packed suitcases, ready for his planned departure the next day. His predictability was almost laughable. Her phone buzzed incessantly. Messages from friends, from Amelia, even from Gregory's sister, Diana. Bianca responded only to her daughter. "I'm okay. This isn't your burden to carry. Enjoy your graduation day. We'll talk tonight. I love you." Bianca had protected Amelia from the truth for months. She didn't want to ruin her final semester with family drama. Amelia would be angry, but Bianca knew she would understand in time. Her daughter, like her mother, was practical, and no doubt she'd inherited her father's charm as well. That powerful combination had earned her honors. Later that day, Gregory came home. Bianca was sitting calmly, reviewing documents. Gregory stormed in, his face flushed with anger, holding the divorce papers in his hand. "What is this?" he demanded. Bianca simply replied, "You wanted to start your new life. I'm just helping facilitate the transition." He didn't expect her quiet confidence. The prenup they had signed years ago had long been thought of as a mere formality. But now, it would cost him everything. "You can't do this to me," Gregory said, collapsing on the couch. Bianca didn't flinch. "Actually, I can," she said, "and I will." He tried to argue. He begged. He said, "We've been together for 28 years. Doesn't that mean something?" Bianca looked at him. "It did, until you decided it didn't." Gregory's desperation mounted. He didn't understand what he had lost until it was already slipping away. She could see the realization dawning on him. The prenuptial agreement he had insisted on had become his undoing. It had been meant to protect him, but it was now a chain tightening around his neck. But Bianca was not about to be the one to stand in the way of her own liberation. The divorce proceedings were swift. Gregory's business was failing without her, his financial support gone. Cassandra left him when she realized he had been lying about his wealth. Bianca moved forward, building the consultancy she had always dreamed of, helping other women navigate life's most difficult transitions, as she herself had done. Amelia, seeing her mother reclaim her strength, joined in, offering her support. "I'm proud of you, Mom," she said, watching as Bianca's new venture began to thrive. Bianca was no longer just Gregory's wife or Amelia's mother. She was an empowered woman, rebuilding her life on her own terms. And as for Gregory, he was left with nothing but the shattered remnants of the life he had tried so hard to control. In the end, Bianca realized something profound. The envelope she had handed Gregory that day was not just a plan for revenge, it was a key to a door she had never known existed. Behind it was not only her own reinvention, but her reclamation of her true self. As Bianca settled into this new chapter, the weight of what had transpired slowly began to lift, replaced by an unexpected sense of liberation. The divorce was finalized, and Gregory's world had crumbled under the weight of his own deceit. The prenuptial agreement that had once seemed like an oppressive document had, in the end, become his downfall. He had lost the house, the property, and most of their shared investments, but the hardest blow was the one to his pride. He had betrayed Bianca in ways he could not undo. Yet, in the aftermath, Bianca wasn't reveling in his fall. Her victory wasn't in his loss, it was in her transformation. She had found a strength in herself she hadn't known existed. The years spent sacrificing her own dreams for the sake of a man who couldn't see her worth had only deepened her resolve to change her own narrative. Caldwell Financial Transitions, the consultancy Bianca had dreamed of for so long, was gaining momentum. She had rented a small office downtown and started helping women like herself, those going through the painful transitions of divorce, widowhood, or career changes. She had become the guiding light for those navigating financial independence, a role she had unknowingly prepared for all her life. The first few months were challenging, but Bianca's knowledge, compassion, and fierce determination made her an invaluable resource to her clients. Word spread quickly, and soon she had a steady stream of clients. Each woman she helped made her feel like her own struggles had not been in vain. She was making a real difference. Amelia, too, was thriving in her new career. She called Bianca regularly, her pride evident in her voice. "I'm so proud of you, Mom. You're helping women during their hardest moments. It's incredible." Bianca felt a deep sense of satisfaction in her daughter's admiration, but even more so in the sense of fulfillment she had never known before. Her daughter had seen her as the steady foundation of the family. But now, Bianca was becoming something more. An entrepreneur, a mentor, a woman who was taking control of her own destiny. It was a revelation that she had longed for, even though she hadn't realized it. The truth was, Gregory had failed to understand the depth of Bianca's resilience. He had thought her quiet strength was a sign of weakness, when in reality, it had been the bedrock of everything they had built. His assumption that she would simply accept the fate he had planned for her had been his greatest mistake. As his business continued to spiral and his personal life fell apart, he found himself alone, surrounded by the consequences of his actions. He had wanted to leave Bianca for Cassandra, but what he hadn't anticipated was that Bianca would find her own path, far beyond the reach of his betrayal. The irony was not lost on Bianca. Gregory had thought he could escape her, that he could rewrite the story they had built together. But in doing so, he had unknowingly set the stage for her own reinvention. She had been playing the part of the dutiful wife and mother, but now she was carving out her own identity as a successful businesswoman, a mentor, and a woman who had reclaimed the power she had always possessed. And as for Gregory, his once carefully constructed facade of the successful businessman, devoted family man, was now shattered. Cassandra, disillusioned with the lies he had fed her, had already moved on. The beach house they had dreamed of purchasing together? It was a distant memory. The life Gregory had hoped to build was slipping through his fingers, while Bianca stood firm, building her future brick by brick. As the months passed, Bianca's consultancy flourished, and Amelia stood proudly by her side, offering support and advice as she navigated her own path in the marketing world. Together, they were not just surviving the aftermath of Gregory's betrayal. They were thriving. They were, in many ways, rebuilding the foundation of their lives. The final divorce hearing had taken place on what would have been their 29th anniversary. Gregory, haggard and broken, was a shadow of the man who had once believed he could control everything. The judge had upheld the prenuptial agreement in its entirety, and Gregory had left the courtroom with nothing but his personal belongings and the bare minimum of assets left to him. He was left to pick up the pieces of his life, with little hope of ever returning to the man he had once been. Meanwhile, Bianca was flourishing in her newfound freedom. She had moved into a larger office space and hired 2 associates to help with the growing demand for her services. Her daughter, now a marketing professional, called her often, always proud of the woman she had become. Bianca had always been proud of Amelia, But now she felt a new sense of pride in herself, a pride that had been forged in the fire of her trials. One afternoon, as Bianca sat in her new office, reviewing a client's financial plan, she received a call from Amelia. "Mom, you won't believe it. I ran into Dad today. He's a mess." Bianca's lips curled into a small smile. "I'm sure he is. He's blaming you, Mom, saying it's your fault everything fell apart." Bianca sighed but remained calm. "Let him. He needs someone to blame. It's always easier than facing the truth." "But what about you?" Amelia asked. "How are you doing?" "I'm doing better than I ever expected," Bianca said, looking out the window of her office at the bustling city streets below. "I've learned a lot about myself in the last few months, and I've found a strength I didn't even know I had." Amelia's voice softened. "I'm so proud of you, Mom." And in that moment, Bianca realized that the woman she had become, strong, independent, and unshakable, was more than enough. She had walked away from a life of compromise and into a future she had once only dreamed of. Her journey had been painful, but it had also been necessary. It had led her to a place where she could finally breathe, where she could finally be the woman she was always meant to be. In the end, the envelope that had contained Gregory's downfall had also been the key to her own freedom. Behind it was not just revenge, but a new beginning. And in that beginning, Bianca Caldwell had found her true self. As Bianca continued to build her consultancy, life settled into a new rhythm, a rhythm she had chosen for herself. The days were no longer clouded by Gregory's constant demands or the weight of his deceit. The office space that had once felt like a small, hopeful dream now felt like a sanctuary, a space that she had created with her own hands, brick by brick. Each client who walked through her door was a reminder of how far she had come, how much she had transformed from the woman who had once silently supported a man who didn't deserve her loyalty. Amelia, now fully immersed in her career, remained her biggest supporter. The bond between mother and daughter had never been stronger. They shared late-night conversations about life, work, and their shared love for growth and empowerment. Amelia was thriving in her marketing career, always calling to check in, always offering words of encouragement, and always quick to remind Bianca how proud she was of her transformation. "I've been thinking, Mom," Amelia said during one of their regular calls. "You've inspired me to do more than just work for a paycheck. I want to help other women the way you've helped them. I want to start a project focused on empowering women in the workplace, showing them their worth, just like you've done with your clients." Bianca's heart swelled with pride. "You already are, sweetheart. You've been empowering people your whole life, just by being yourself. Don't ever forget that." It wasn't just Amelia who was proud of Bianca. Her clients, who had once been lost and broken like she had been, now looked to her as a beacon of strength. She had become their guide, helping them navigate their own journeys through life's hardest transitions. Each woman who left her office with newfound confidence and a clear financial plan was a small victory, a victory that Bianca could cherish, knowing that her own battles had led her to this point. One evening, as she closed up her office after a long day of meetings, Bianca sat in the quiet, reflecting on everything she had overcome. She thought about the woman she had once been, the devoted wife and mother who had put everyone else's needs above her own. That woman seemed like a distant memory now, a shadow of who she had become. And yet, she could never forget the lessons she had learned from those years of selflessness. The sacrifices hadn't been in vain. They had shaped her into a woman who knew what it meant to fight for herself, to demand respect, and to never settle for less than she deserved. Her phone buzzed with a message from Diana, her sister-in-law, and now one of her closest allies. It was a simple message, but it made Bianca smile. "How's everything going, Bea? Amelia told me you're kicking butt in the consultancy. Proud of you." Bianca couldn't help but laugh softly. Diana had always been there for her, even when the world around her was crumbling. "It's going well. Thank you for everything, Diana. You've been a lifeline." Diana's reply came almost immediately. "You're my sister, Bianca. You've always been strong. It was only a matter of time before you remembered that." The support from her family, especially from Amelia and Diana, was priceless. It was clear that Bianca had surrounded herself with people who understood her strength and who celebrated her victories, no matter how small. But there were moments, quiet, solitary moments, when Bianca fought back to the pain, to the years of betrayal, to the husband who had once been her everything. She couldn't help but reflect on the life they had built together, the dreams they had shared, and the promises they had made. And while she felt no more regret for ending their marriage than she did for shedding a skin that no longer fit, there were times when the finality of it all still stung. It was a pain that would fade with time, just as the wounds of the past had. But for now, Bianca had made peace with the fact that some things were never meant to last. As the months passed, Gregory's life continued to unravel. His business faltered without her financial support, and his new life with Cassandra, what he had believed would be his salvation, soon began to slip through his fingers. Cassandra had left him, disillusioned by his lies and the truth of his financial struggles. Gregory had underestimated how much Bianca's absence would cost him, not just in terms of money, but in everything he had taken for granted. Word spread that Gregory was struggling. His former friends, those who had once rallied behind him, began to distance themselves. The facade he had worked so hard to maintain, of the successful businessman, the loving family man, was shattered beyond repair. His name became synonymous with betrayal, dishonesty, and failure. And while Gregory was left to rebuild his life from the ground up, Bianca was thriving. She no longer had to prove herself to anyone. The business was growing. She had hired 2 new associates who shared her vision, and they had already begun making waves in the community. She had become an expert in helping women find financial independence during life's hardest transitions. She was not only rebuilding her own life, but she was creating a space for other women to do the same. In the midst of her success, Bianca received a letter from the university where Amelia had graduated. It was a thank you note for Bianca's donation to a scholarship fund that helped underprivileged students. The letter was short, but it moved Bianca to tears. It reminded her of the journey she had taken, of the sacrifices she had made to give Amelia the best opportunities, and of the woman her daughter had become. That evening, as she sat in her office, the weight of the last year settled into her bones. She had faced down her past, overcome betrayal, and emerged stronger. But there was something even more profound in her reflection. She had rediscovered herself. She had reclaimed the life she had once put on hold, and in doing so, she had found something even more precious than success. She had found her voice, her purpose, and her own unshakable power. And as Bianca Caldwell sat back in her chair, looking at the future she was building, she realized that her journey wasn't just about revenge or the destruction of the life she had once known. It was about reinvention, about embracing the woman she had always been beneath the roles and expectations. It was about taking the pain and using it as fuel for something greater, something all her own. For the first time in years, Bianca could honestly say she was exactly where she was meant to be, and that, she knew, was just the beginning. The years after Bianca's divorce unfolded like the next chapters of a novel she had written herself. Each page filled with fresh challenges, profound victories, and unexpected joys. Her consultancy, Caldwell Financial Transitions, had grown beyond what she had ever imagined. No longer a small office in the downtown district, it was now a thriving business in a prime location, with a team of 5 associates. Word of mouth had spread, And soon, Bianca found herself consulting not only with women navigating divorce, but also with women in mid-career transitions, those seeking financial independence, and even young professionals hoping to build secure futures. Her brand, rooted in authenticity, integrity, and a fierce commitment to empowering women, resonated deeply with her clients. They didn't just want financial advice. They wanted guidance from someone who understood the stakes, who had been there, who had rebuilt a life from the ashes of betrayal. Bianca had become a symbol of strength, a mentor who could light the way for others who were facing their own turbulent crossroads. Amelia, now flourishing in her marketing career in Charleston, continued to be Bianca's most ardent supporter. Despite the strain of the past, their bond had only deepened. Amelia would visit regularly, often bringing her colleagues along, fascinated by Bianca's story and the powerful impact she was having on the lives of her clients. "You're a trailblazer, Mom," Amelia said one afternoon, sitting across from Bianca in the bright, airy office. "The way you took everything life threw at you and turned it into something positive. It's not just inspiring, it's revolutionary." Bianca smiled, her heart swelling with pride. "You've always been my inspiration, sweetheart. You remind me every day that strength doesn't always look the way we expect. It's not about how hard we fall, but how we choose to get back up." It was a sentiment that Bianca had truly come to understand, not just intellectually, but in the marrow of her bones. The fall she had experienced, her marriage crumbling, the discovery of Gregory's betrayal, the public humiliation, had shattered her, but it had also set the stage for her rebirth. Now she was no longer just a survivor. She was a woman on a mission to help others break free of the chains that held them down. And then, unexpectedly, came the day Gregory reappeared. Bianca hadn't seen him in years, and when she heard his name again, it felt like a distant echo from a past life. He had tried unsuccessfully to maintain a facade of success, but those who had once admired him now saw him for what he truly was: deceitful, arrogant, and lost. His business, once buoyed by her financial acumen, had completely fallen apart. He had lost Cassandra, too, the woman he had so confidently chosen over Bianca. But when he called her, out of the blue, asking for a meeting, Bianca felt only a small, fleeting curiosity. "I've made a terrible mistake," he said over the phone, his voice unsteady. "I know what I've done to you. I know what I've lost. I want to talk." Bianca thought for a moment. She could feel the weight of the years, of the pain that had once crushed her. But she was no longer that woman. She had moved beyond him and the life they had shared. Her heart had healed, and her mind was sharp with clarity. "Gregory," she said, her voice steady and calm, "I don't need to talk. The past is gone, and I've built a life I'm proud of. A life that doesn't include you." She didn't have the need for drama. She didn't need closure from him. The closure had already come when she stood in the restaurant, the weight of his betrayal sinking in, and walked away. The closure had come in the weeks that followed, when she made the decision to reclaim herself. She didn't need his apology to move forward. She had already forgiven him in her own time. But she was no longer interested in being tethered to that past. She knew that this was his final attempt to make sense of his decisions, but it was not hers to fix. He was still the man who had calculated his own escape while leaving her to clean up his mess. And Bianca was not in the business of fixing broken people anymore. She didn't respond further, just ended the call with a finality that Gregory would surely feel. For the first time in her life, Bianca could breathe freely, fully, without the weight of someone else's mistakes pressing down on her. As she continued to build her consultancy, Bianca found herself embracing her newfound sense of purpose. The work was fulfilling, but more importantly, it was a way to show other women that they didn't need to be defined by the roles others had assigned to them. they could rewrite their own stories, just as she had done. Every woman who walked through her door with uncertainty in her eyes left with a renewed sense of possibility. One afternoon, a woman named Sarah, a recently divorced client, came into Bianca's office, looking anxious but determined. Over their consultation, Bianca listened intently to Sarah's story of betrayal, of losing herself in the shadow of her ex-husband's success. "I don't even know where to begin," Sarah said, her voice trembling. Bianca smiled gently. "You begin with yourself. You start with the understanding that you are enough, exactly as you are." As Sarah left the office that day with a plan in place and a renewed sense of direction, Bianca reflected on the path that had brought her here. From the woman who had once quietly endured to the business owner, the mentor, the advocate, she had become everything she had once dreamed of. And more. One evening, as Bianca sat in her office overlooking the city lights, her phone buzzed with a text message from Amelia. "Just wanted to let you know I'm so proud of you, Mom. You've turned your life into something incredible, and I hope one day I can do the same." Bianca's eyes misted over. She had given Amelia everything she had, and now their shared journey had come full circle. Amelia had learned from her, and in turn, Bianca had learned from her daughter's unshakable belief in her. With a soft smile, Bianca responded, "We're both doing it, sweetheart. We're both building something beautiful." And with that, she returned to her work, her heart full, knowing that the life she had built, one grounded in strength, integrity, and compassion, was only just beginning to flourish. The woman who had once defined herself through the expectations of others was now defining her own path. And as she looked ahead to the future, she knew that nothing could ever hold her back again. The journey had not only been about revenge, it had been about reinvention, about learning that her greatest power lay in her ability to rise time and time again. And this time, she was doing it for herself. As the months rolled by, Bianca's life became an intricate tapestry of new experiences, triumphs, and moments of quiet reflection. Her consultancy was thriving, and she was becoming a sought-after expert in her field. Women who had once felt overwhelmed by the intricacies of their financial lives now came to her for clarity and guidance. They looked to Bianca not just as a financial advisor, but as someone who understood their deepest fears and desires. She had walked the painful path of betrayal, and now she was offering them a road to healing, stability, and empowerment. Each success story she helped create fueled her own sense of purpose. Bianca had become something she had never imagined, an advocate for financial independence, a leader, and a guide to those who were ready to take control of their lives. Her clients no longer just saw her as a professional, they saw her as a beacon of strength, a woman who had rebuilt her life from the ashes and found a new, powerful identity. One rainy afternoon, Bianca sat in her office, reflecting on how far she had come. The financial reports she was reviewing seemed almost secondary compared to the deeper, more rewarding work she was doing now. She had always been skilled with numbers, but it was the stories of the women she helped that filled her heart. The joy in their eyes when they realized they were capable of standing on their own was something she had never expected to find. It was more fulfilling than any salary or business success could ever be. The phone rang, and it was Amelia. Her voice was filled with excitement as she shared her latest career milestone, a major promotion at the marketing firm in Charleston. It was a testament to Amelia's hard work, ambition, and unshakable belief in herself. Bianca felt a rush of pride, her heart swelling with love for her daughter. They had both come so far. "You're doing amazing things, Mom," Amelia said, her voice bright. "I'm so grateful for everything you've taught me. You've shown me that no matter what life throws at us, we can always turn it around." Bianca smiled, her eyes misting. You've always been my inspiration, Amelia. You remind me every day that resilience runs in our blood. The bond between mother and daughter had deepened into something even stronger than before. They were no longer just family. They were allies, partners in the journey of life. Bianca's heart swelled with pride, not just for Amelia's accomplishments, but for the woman she had raised, strong, independent, and unafraid to chase her dreams. But it wasn't just Amelia who had changed. Bianca herself had evolved in ways she couldn't have predicted. The woman who had once defined herself solely through her marriage and her role as a mother was now carving out an identity of her own. No longer confined by the expectations of others, she had embraced her own strength, her own voice. She was building a life she could be proud of, one that was hers and hers alone. One evening, as Bianca sat on the balcony of her office, watching the city lights flicker below, she reflected on the journey that had led her here. She thought of the pain, the betrayal, the quiet anger that had fueled her desire for change. She thought of the woman she had been and the woman she had become. It was a journey of healing, of growth, and most importantly, of reclaiming her power. Her phone buzzed again, this time with a message from Diana. The two had become incredibly close over the past few years, their bond deepened by the shared experience of witnessing Gregory's betrayal. Diana, once Bianca's sister-in-law, had become a trusted confidant, a friend, and someone who had always been there when Bianca needed her most. "You've built something incredible, B," Diana's message read. "I hope you know how proud I am of you. You're not just surviving, you're thriving." Bianca's fingers hovered over the keyboard as she replied, "Thank you, Diana. You've been a part of this journey too. I couldn't have done it without you." The friendship that had grown between Bianca and Diana was a reminder of how life could surprise you. Bianca had never imagined that she would find such a strong ally in her former sister-in-law, but life had a way of bringing the right people into your world when you needed them most. They had both learned the same lesson. Betrayal wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something new, something better. A week later, Bianca received a call from one of her clients, an older woman named Margaret, who had recently gone through a messy divorce. Margaret had been unsure of her financial future, unsure if she could ever stand on her own 2 feet. But after several months of working with Bianca, she had begun to take control of her finances and her life. "Bianca," Margaret's voice trembled with emotion on the other end of the line. "I just wanted to thank you. When I first came to you, I was so lost. I thought I'd never be able to move forward. But now, I feel like I'm in control. I don't just have the numbers straight. I feel like I have my life back." Bianca's heart swelled with pride. This was why she had become a financial consultant. Not just to help people with their money, but to help them rebuild their lives, to give them the tools to stand strong, no matter what life threw at them. "Margaret," Bianca said softly, her voice filled with warmth, "I'm so proud of you. You did the hard work. You took the steps. All I did was help you see what was always within you." As Bianca ended the call, she felt a profound sense of fulfillment. This was her legacy. Not the betrayal or the failed marriage, but the lives she had touched, the women she had empowered, and the strength she had found in herself. The next chapter of her life wasn't just about business or success. It was about living a life she could be proud of. It was about being true to herself, to her values, and to the women she helped every day. She had learned to love herself again, to trust herself, and to believe in her own power. And as Bianca Caldwell sat back in her office chair, watching the sun dip below the horizon, She realized that she had truly found something more valuable than anything she had ever dreamed of. A life on her own terms, one where she was finally the heroine of her own story. The woman who had once been broken had become the architect of her own future, and there was no limit to what she could achieve. Her journey was far from over. It was just beginning. And for the first time in a long time, Bianca was excited to see where it would lead. As Bianca's life continued to unfold in this new empowered direction, she found herself reflecting more on the lessons she had learned from her past experiences. The pain and betrayal had been transformative, but they had also helped her realize the depth of her inner strength. No longer confined by the shadows of a failed marriage or the weight of unspoken sacrifices, she embraced each new day with a renewed sense of purpose. The office, once a small, modest space, had become a beacon of opportunity. Women walked in with questions, fears, and uncertainty. But by the time they left, they were different, empowered, enlightened, and ready to take control of their financial futures. Bianca was no longer just a consultant. She was a mentor, a guide, and an advocate for every woman who sought her help. Her reputation as a financial expert grew. Word spread, and soon Bianca was invited to speak at conferences, write guest articles, and participate in panels about financial independence and overcoming adversity. She began to realize that the impact she had was far greater than she had ever expected. She was not just helping women with numbers, she was helping them rewrite the narrative of their lives. Her clients weren't just coming to her for budgeting tips or investment strategies. They were coming to reclaim their futures. They were coming to learn how to stand up for themselves, how to break free from the patterns that had held them back. Some came to her in the aftermath of a divorce, others after losing a loved one, and some simply wanted to change careers and needed guidance to make that leap. Bianca helped them all, drawing from her own experiences to provide not just financial advice, but emotional support and strength. The satisfaction Bianca found in her work was immeasurable, but there was something even more fulfilling, something she hadn't expected. As her consultancy grew, so did her connection with the women she worked with. They weren't just clients anymore, they had become a community. And in that community, Bianca found not only professional fulfillment, but personal joy. One day, after a long meeting with a new client, Bianca received an unexpected message from Amelia. The text was simple, yet it struck Bianca deeply. "I'm really proud of you, Mom. I see how hard you're working, and I can see how much you're giving back. You've always taught me to be strong, but now I see how strong you really are." Bianca read the message over and over, allowing it to sink in. Her daughter, the one who had been there through it all, who had seen her mother endure and rise time and time again, now saw Bianca in a new light. She wasn't just her mother. She was her hero. For the first time in a long time, Bianca allowed herself to fully embrace that role. She wasn't just a survivor of her past. She was thriving. She was strong. And she was becoming the kind of woman she had always aspired to be. As she sat at her desk, contemplating the future, Bianca realized that she had become more than she had ever imagined. She had rebuilt her life, not just financially, but emotionally and spiritually. The woman who had once been defined by her marriage and her role as a wife and mother was now defining her own path, living her truth unapologetically. But she also knew that this journey wasn't just about her. It was about the women she helped every day. It was about creating a legacy, a ripple effect that would inspire others to take control of their financial destinies and their lives. She had seen firsthand how one person's story could inspire others, and she was determined to continue sharing her story, not for validation, but for empowerment. And so Bianca's consultancy continued to grow. She expanded her services to include workshops, group coaching, and even an online platform for women to connect, share their journeys, and learn from one another. She knew that financial independence was just the beginning of the transformation. It was the foundation on which women could build everything else: confidence, freedom, and the courage to create the lives they had always dreamed of. Every day brought new challenges, new opportunities, and new stories, and Bianca was ready for each one. She was no longer just a woman who had been hurt by betrayal. She was a woman who had reclaimed her power. She had turned pain into purpose, and in doing so, had created something far greater than herself: a movement of women who were rewriting the rules, reclaiming their financial futures, and building lives that reflected their true worth. One afternoon, as Bianca sat in her office, reviewing a financial plan for a client, her phone rang. It was Amelia. "Mom, I just wanted to let you know, I've been thinking about everything you've built. I'm starting my own project, too, something that's going to help women in the workplace. It's inspired by what you've done, and I want to help more women find their voice." Bianca's heart swelled with pride as she listened to Amelia. It was like hearing her own story reflected in the next generation. "You've always had it in you, sweetheart," Bianca said, her voice thick with emotion. "You're going to do amazing things. I know it." Amelia had inherited her strength, her ambition, and her unshakable belief in herself. Bianca could see it now, clear as day. The legacy wasn't just about financial success. It was about passing on the lessons of resilience, strength, and self-worth. It was about creating a world where women could stand tall, proud, and unafraid to take up space. As Bianca hung up the phone, she took a deep breath and looked out the window. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the city, and in that moment, she knew that this was just the beginning. The woman who had once been broken had now become a force for change, for empowerment, and for the kind of freedom that came not just from financial independence, but from knowing, deeply and undeniably, that she was enough. And with every step she took, she was lighting the way for others to follow. In the end, Bianca didn't just rebuild her life, she transformed it. And in doing so, she helped others transform theirs. The power of reinvention had become her truth, and as long as she continued to breathe, she would never stop reinventing herself and the world around her. Bianca's life continued to evolve, moving further away from the life she had once known and deeper into the one she had created for herself. As her consultancy flourished, so did her sense of self. She had discovered a resilience within her that she hadn't realized existed, and every new client she helped, every woman who walked through her door and left with renewed hope and confidence, added to the ever-growing legacy she was building. But there were moments when Bianca would pause and think back, not with regret, but with deep appreciation for the journey. She had never imagined that her life would take such unexpected turns, but each twist and turn had shaped her into the woman she had become, a woman who no longer sought approval or validation from others, but lived her truth unapologetically. It was on a crisp autumn morning that Bianca received a letter she hadn't expected. It was from Gregory, her ex-husband, the man who had once been her partner, the man who had betrayed her in every possible way. The letter was simple, but the words were heavy. "Bianca, I know it's been a long time, and you've probably long moved on, but I wanted to say I'm sorry. I've spent the last few years trying to make sense of everything. I've lost so much, and I know I only have myself to blame. I've never truly thanked you for everything you did for me, for the family, For Amelia, you made me a better person, and I took that for granted. I won't ask for your forgiveness, but I hope one day you can look back on us and remember the good times too. Gregory. Bianca read the letter with a mixture of disbelief and understanding. She had never expected Gregory to reach out. There was no need for closure from him, not anymore. She had found her own peace long before this letter arrived. And yet, in some small, quiet corner of her heart, she realized that this apology, though late, was a sign of growth. It was Gregory's acknowledgement of his wrongs, but it was not a doorway back into her life. The past had already been laid to rest. She placed the letter in her drawer, her fingers lingering for a moment on the paper. For a second, it was as if the weight of the years, the pain, the betrayal, washed over her. But it was fleeting. Bianca had long ago shed the weight of her past, and though the letter stirred something deep inside her, it did not define her. She was no longer the woman who had spent years in the shadows of someone else's mistakes. Her journey had not been easy, but it had been worth every challenge, and now the future was hers to shape. She could see it clearly. A future where she continued to help women find financial freedom. A future where she traveled, where she expanded her consultancy into new markets, and where she could finally take the time to invest in herself, in her own dreams, those she had once put on hold for others. And so, Bianca carried on. She had become a symbol of what it meant to rise from the ashes, to rebuild a life on her own terms. She was a woman who had learned the power of reinvention, not just once, but time and time again. The woman who had been abandoned, betrayed, and silenced was now the woman who walked boldly into the future, knowing her worth and her power. The envelope she had once handed Gregory in that restaurant, the one that had marked the end of one life and the beginning of another, was now a symbol of transformation. It was the moment she had stepped into her true self, the woman who was unshakable, the woman who knew she could overcome anything. As the years passed, Bianca's consultancy grew, and with it, her impact. She had helped hundreds of women take control of their finances, their futures, their lives. And along the way, she had found something even more precious: her own peace, her own strength, and her own sense of purpose. She had once been a woman defined by her relationships, by her role in others' lives. But now, Bianca was defined by herself. She was a woman of substance, of wisdom, of power, and she was determined to continue creating a life that was hers, one that was as limitless as the possibilities that lay ahead. And as she looked ahead, with her future wide open before her, she knew that the best chapters of her life were still yet to be written. Every step, every decision, every new challenge was an opportunity to grow, to learn, and to continue reinventing herself. The woman who had been broken had become the woman who could never be broken again. The woman who had been trapped by the past was now free to create the future she had always dreamed of. And that future, she knew, was nothing short of extraordinary.